Good afternoon. Can we do brown bags every other day so we can get lunch every day or something like that? Holy cow. I think you guys are going to have brown bags for the rest of our life. Michelle, this is new for us. We usually have a brown bag once every other month, right, John, or something like that. But it just seems like we've got so much stuff going on, we're going to have to do brown bags for a while. So I think, Brenda, you're in charge of this today, or Denise, are you? Utilities your portfolio, or?
I think I'm in charge.
Okay. Brenda, can you please tell us about proposed utility rate increases change this year?
Absolutely, I would love to. But before we get going, just so everyone knows who we are, you don't see all of our faces. You see some of us more than others. And so I thought if we could just go through and introduce and which utility they work with, we'll start with that. You want to start, Troy?
Troy Hall, Water Utility Director. I've been with City of Fargo about 12 years, almost exactly now, and had previous water system experience before that, and really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our water utility and rates. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jim Hausarm, I'm the Water Reclamation Utility Director. That's fancy for sewer. Nationally, the industry just wanted to get away from the phrase of wastewater or sewer. So a lot of, especially in the western states, they essentially talk about water reclamation facilities or resource recovery facilities as far as on the wastewater side. I've been a part of the water and wastewater industry since 1989, so for 35 years, but 22 of those years have been with the City of Fargo.
And I'm Tom Knockmoose. I'm the city engineer, and within engineering, we have two utilities that we oversee: storm sewer utility and our traffic streetlight utility. And today we'll be speaking about the storm sewer utility.
Hi, I'm Susan Thompson. I'm the finance director, so I work with all of these guys.
Okay, so we'll get going. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. As we work through the presentation, as you heard just now, you will see that we all really enjoy sharing about our utilities and all the projects that we're working on. Our revenue adequacy model for the utilities and have assisted the city in determining the timing of rate increases based on our expenses. These models are reviewed frequently to manage the utilities and to see how we are progressing. This year, we wanted to provide you information on what goes into our revenue adequacy model, which includes our master planning, along with projects that we all have been working on. Our staff are consistently looking for alternative means and methods to their workflow to mitigate the cost to our citizens. So the goals of the meeting today are to provide an overview of water reclamation or wastewater, and the storm sewer utilities. We will present utility rate increases recommended for 2025, and we'll provide background information and current considerations in advance of the 2025 city budget presentation. Today, we will discuss the utility rates and their importance to the revenue adequacy model, along with how the model assists us with forecasting rates. The water utility will update you on their work, including the Red River Valley Water Supply Project, then the Water Reclamation Utility, followed by the Storm Sewer Utility. We will follow that up with a synopsis of all the rates in a regional rate comparison and summary. You will see at the end that we have been able to keep our utility rates regionally low, mostly due to the infrastructure sales tax. Our utility rates provide adequate revenue for sustainable long-term operation of the utility. Our key expenses include the operation, maintenance, and staffing expenses associated with the utility infrastructure and facilities, along with capital improvement and debt service and the general fund. Here you will see the revenues coming in on the left here. These consist of rate revenue, infrastructure sales tax, grant funding, and also SRF loans. The SRF loan opportunity has allowed our utilities access to federal loans that spreads our cost out at a very low 2% interest. And it also has granted us some loan forgiveness. On the other side, you will see our costs consisting of our capital improvements, operating expenses, and debt service, along with the general fund. All of the utilities create long-term master plans that span up to 20 years. They look at system challenges and evaluate the system. From that evaluation, we look at improvement concepts and create our capital improvement plan. Once we have a plan, we evaluate funding considerations and then go into implementation. Here you'll see an example of the 20-year water CIP that spanned the life of their master plan, and they are just starting the beginnings of a new master plan. From the information that is inputted into the model, we can see what the rate schedule is needed to support an overall operation of the utility. Here you will see an example of the water utility, and I will now hand it off to Troy.
Oops. Yeah, thank you, Brenda, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about the water utility. Just starting off, just a little bit about the water utility overview. You see in the picture here, we see a nice drone shot of our water plant campus that's located right along the Red River on 13th Avenue. With the water utility, we are a regional system. We serve West Fargo and portions of Cache Rural Water, and that's mutually beneficial when we do that from a financial consideration, and I'll show that. We do serve a population of over 180,000 people, and our peak water demand is actually over 30 million gallons a day. That's a lot of water in summer. So that's how why we plan and prepare. We have two water sources for our water treatment plant: the Red and Cheyenne River. The Red River is our primary source of water. The Cheyenne is, we have a limited capacity pipeline that we can pump water from the Cheyenne River. It's 9 miles long. This year we've been using a lot of Cheyenne just because it's advantageous from a treatability and cost standpoint. So we use a lot of Cheyenne right now. We operate two water treatment plants: an older 97 water plant, which is 30 million gallons a day. 2019 plant, 15 million gallons a day, different technologies with both of them. And then as you see, with total, they have 45 million gallons a day treatment capacity. And so we do have, comparison to our peak day, we do have some room to support further population growth in the area. And then just one interesting thing about I'll talk about this first here, but in addition to the water treatment plants, we do operations and maintenance of our water towers, and then also pumping stations, source and treatment, and then also some of the large diameter pipelines through town. But one of the interesting things about our water system is it's a pressure system, like all water systems kind of across the nation are. So that's why we have water towers. So the water level in those water towers, so there's water in the tanks there, that water level largely determines the pressure that people get to their houses and businesses and things like that. So and with that, we never want to lose pressure to our system, so we focus on that. One thing with a pressure system, like we saw with the cold snap in Texas a couple of years ago, and then in the 97 flood in the Red River Valley, we saw systems go down, and then that's a big job to bring it back. One other thing, we were part of the growth plan effort led by the planning department, and with our plans in place, we can serve a population of about additional 50,000 people. And then one of the things that we partner, like with water reclamation here, Jim, so like when we get proposed new industries maybe coming to town, we will actually kind of steer them rather than use up our capacity that we'd use for population growth. We might steer them for water reuse, which has been very successful on the water reclamation side. So, and then this slide is not intended to go through in detail, but we have had a series of planning efforts. This goes back to 2002, but we have a series of planning efforts and how the capital improvements and how we fund them, which is a really big deal. And the planning continues to, go into the future. But one of the really neat things or important things about Fargo is there was a 1-cent sales tax adopted before 2010, and water gets about 1/4 cent of that. That's really funded a lot of the infrastructure, helped us fund water infrastructure and keeps our rates down. So all of our larger projects and anticipated expenses are in a financial model that looks at this planning, these planning efforts or master planning. So, when I bring items to the city commission for approval, I actually always know it's always planned for and I always know how it's going to be funded. So that's really, really good. Operationally, we day to day, we try to be diligent. Well, we try really hard to be diligent in how we do things for sure. But I think, we put a couple of, there's been some recent unintended successes or awards for the water system, but I think that's really, we try day to day, but it's really because there's been a plan in place for a few decades and we've tried to implement that plan, and that's really helped us out. So, and in the industry, we know that not with the master plan, we have the tools to treat really what we know in industry is really difficult source water if you're in the water industry. Oops, I'm going to go back one here. One more thing about that. One of the success stories with the master planning and working in partnership with engineering department is our water main replacement program. So I look back in history because the cast iron water main installed many decades ago hasn't held up very well. So in 1988, I look back and there were 603 water main breaks that city staff had to address. In the last few years, due to the replacement program, it's been more like 20 to 25. So it's been a major issue, a major help in planning that. So,
Right. Might I ask a question on that?
Yes, sir.
To what degree do we offer or help people connect with insurance programs to cover their water main breaks? I know like National League of Cities has a partner, but do we do that locally?
Do you want to, as far as paying for the water main breaks?
You can have an insurance plan, so if you have a break, you're covered with insurance and you don't have a $20,000 bill.
Okay.
Example.
Okay, so maybe two different parts of that. The water, what I'm talking about here is more of the water main breaks. There's insurance programs for service line leaks out there, and we've actually looked at what does it cost to deal with the service line if it ends up to be customer's responsibility. However, those are really, in my opinion, very inflated when you look at the calculation what they pay per month. So it's not very the insurance program.
They frequently come through and try to sell the insurance policy to people, but we can put it on their specials and we're cheaper than the insurance, right? That's what I've heard.
Right.
Is that the insurance policy is relatively expensive and then they high premium, whatever. But if you put it on the specials over 20 years, it's just as cheap.
So on
Except
top,
that insurance is proactive. Specials means you've had the incident happen and then you're paying for it. Yeah, I just am curious about it.
But John, you're paying an insurance policy every year, and if you don't have a break, you've just given somebody a profit.
so one of the things I would talk about too is if you look at the water service, the most expensive part of a water repair is from the curb stop to the street. When you dig in the street, the homeowner's responsibility is from the curb stop, which is in the boulevard, to their house. So that is the more economical part. And we do still offer that assessment as a tool, knowing that amount of money isn't just sitting there for most people.
And Brenda, do you have a rough idea how much that is? $5,000, $10,000? Any guys?
I think the water service repairs are typically smaller than the sanitary sewer, but I would guess they're closer to that 5,000 to 10,000.
Does that help answer your question there?
It does. I just wonder if homeowners and property owners know their options. And even if they know they can get insurance, some may choose to do that.
Yep. And I've been, I've been talked to or contacted about some of the insurance policies kind of things over the years, but I just looking at the math, I haven't really pursued them because I didn't think it was the best interest of our citizens, but it's certainly their option, I would say. Would that be accurate?
Sorry to derail you there.
No, it's fine. I'm glad I had Brenda and Tom at the table to help me out with that one. I'm more of a process guy, so. And then I did want to talk about the regional system benefits to Fargo customers. It is financially beneficial to Fargo and then our regional systems in a couple of different ways. One is when we have fixed costs for our utility, such as staffing, maintenance of equipment, and so forth. And those costs, when we spread them out to a bigger population, it actually gets better per person or per customer cost. So such things as operation and maintenance of the water treatment plant, debt service, say, for example, on our new water treatment plant, it's spread out a little bit more, and that actually has about a 20% benefit on customer rates, or it cuts the rates by about $7 a month, just spreading out those costs. So that's a good thing. And then a separate added impact that's outside of what I talked about here. Regionalization is really viewed very positively by the state and federal, because then they don't have to build as many separate water treatment plants out there and regulate them. So there has to be state involvement. So there's a cost to the state as well. And the mayor mentioned on Monday night that by regionalizing and partnering with Fargo, it avoided West Fargo from having to build about $100 million water plant. And I remember those reports that, came out.
And Troy, just so the commissioners know, some places in the state, Cass Rural, the rural system fights with the city system, and we're the one system that we all work together. We've worked out those relationships prior to me. Different leadership had done that, so we worked out relationships with that. But in some communities in the state of North Dakota, they're all fighting for different water. In fact, in Jamestown, a different system put in the fire system versus the water that was supplied to the business. And we don't have those types of fights. But this is the big one, is 20%. Somebody one time said, why are you doing this? And Troy, you're exactly right. We save our residents costs.
Yep. And that is, like I said, it's 20%, about $7 a month on an average residential bill. So that's really good. And then the regionalization also helps us, just that term regionalization, it helps us with a lot of our grant applications. So from a regionalization, by using that term in our applications, it's actually got us about $45 million in grants for our capital projects over the last 12 years. And that's really a big number, and we know how impactful these grants can be to the rates. So there's been situations where we've actually delayed projects a year just so, because we just know how impactful it will be on rates. The other thing, so that's the regionalization part of it, but there's other grants that we've been able to secure, like EPA and FEMA grants for our projects, and that's about another $10 million. And the way I've looked at it from a rate standpoint, like I said, it's about 20% on just the regionalization part. But if you avoid, if our alternative to funding these projects without grants is that we take out a loan for it. So what it really does is avoids us from paying about a $2.5 million loan each and every year annually for about 30 years. So that's how I've calculated. And that's about a $3.30 benefit to our customers as well. And then looking at just, we have about 4 strategies as far as rate containment. So these strategies put together are really impactful to our customers. So without these strategies, right now, our actual customer average residential bill in 2024 is about $37.15 per month. Without these strategies, it would be about $22.50 more, about 61% more increase. But what we did is list them out from most impactful to least impactful, but nonetheless, they're all important. But the most impactful one is the infrastructure sales tax, and that reduces the average residential bill by about $10.77 a month. And that, that's not just the water utility, helps the engineering CIP. It helps with our big drought supply projects, Red River Valley, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then the thing about the sales tax too is, I don't know exact percentage, but it's somewhere in the 40 to 50% range that's paid by visitors to Fargo, which really helps out. So, one of the things with our infrastructure, in 2028, that is set to expire or sunset. So that's going to be, from a rate impact, that's going to be really important to look at extending that. So just so you know that. And then the second most impactful, I talked about that last slide, regional service, about $7 a month. The grant, about $3.34 a month, and then some operational efficiencies. I don't have time to go into that, but all in all, it's about 22.5 rate impact to our customers on a monthly basis. Oh, and then just one other thing, we do, outside of this table, we do try to be really innovative in our project design when we look at different projects. So one thing, we'll talk about Red River Valley Water Supply Project, but one issue with that comes down the Cheyenne River is our supply. And we also got to get it 9 miles to the water treatment plant. So one of the options looked at back was a pipeline and complex pump station to get it, and that's like a 72-inch diameter pipe. It's a really big pipe coming through town. We figured out a way, partnering with engineering, how to do it open channel using some of the drainage systems. And we don't, it's more of a draft report, but that's like about, over $200 million cost avoidance that we don't, we're just using open channel, much simpler, cheaper methods. So, and then this is actually where we are. So this is a rate survey. Let me make sure I get my place here. This is market or regional comparison. So the yellow box down below, $37.15 on an average monthly bill, compared against all of our, some of our regional water systems. So we're about in the lower fourth there. And I showed you at the previous slide a rate containment strategy. We used a yellow arrow to point out where we would be without those rate containments. So we're actually very low in the region as far as rates. And then I did want to tell you, these rates, this $37.15, what it does cover, it covers water treatment operations. It covers operations of some other city departments, water utility debt service, water main replacement, and some other small capital. And then, again, all of our stuff is financially modeled and in our master plan. So I did want to talk just some of the projects we're working on. A couple of the one big one, which we'll talk about next slide, is Red River Valley Drought Supply Project. So that's a really important one. But we are finishing up a lot of our projects at our water treatment plant campus right now. So we're kind of moving on to some of the distribution stuff. But a real exciting project that's going to start up in a few months is a replacement of our residential commercial meters. And so the city will operate more efficiently, have real-time data, and it's going to be really important for our Red River Valley water supply operation. And then another one that I hope to bring to the commission very soon, there's about 66% grant funding for lead service line replacement, and that's, Commissioner Strand, that's what's a little bit what you were talking about, service lines. But there's 6% grant funding available right now. So I'm hoping to bring that forward soon. So that'll be something that we look at potentially in the next couple of years as well. I do have a list. There's several projects, but I don't have so much time to go into it today. But we've been doing a lot of stuff. Do you have a question?
Bear with me with my my lack of knowledge, but with communities across the country who have really severe issues with lead service lines. And I asked, but I still don't understand how much are we or are people at risk, or are they not at risk with lead service pipes?
Well, and no, thank you for the question. So what we do is we do lead concentration testing almost most years. Now we're on kind of, because our levels have been so low, we're on reduced monitoring right now, so we're not actually going to test this year. But our levels compared to where the kind of EPA standard, it's not a standard, but it's called an action level, but we're really low. The thing about the lead is, there's new regulations that kick in actually this fall, and that's kind of a monster. It's a big rule. It's very complicated. It's going to take a lot of effort with that, just from the monitoring standpoint. So that's coming down the pipe, and in that, it actually changes the way we have to sample and collect those samples. But I suspect we'll do decently even under the new rules, but it's just going to be a lot of work. But I think our levels are super low when we do the testing.
Bear with me again, is it older core neighborhoods would have lead versus new ones? And do we know where they are and how much there is?
Yep. So we're very fortunate, Public Works, and we've been working together for quite a while on some of this, but we, through Public Works efforts, we've kind of gone through all the diagrams of neighborhoods and stuff, so we have a really good idea where there are, and that's actually something under the new rule. It has to be published and publicly available where they are and everything. But with the grant funding, that's a thing just for like home sales. It's probably a negative when you go try and sell a home too. So just getting some of those maybe replaced is probably just a very good thing for the community. But right now there's a lot of funding available. So. Does that help?
It does. I just am trying to visualize the scope of that issue, or how far it goes or not.
Yeah.
And I don't quite understand it as how much risk there is and whose risk it is, and what the future would be. And I just know the nightmare stories some cities in the country have, and I don't think we're in that space. But
no, we're very deliberate, and really, so the lead service line issue, it's really a local issue at the home, in that it's corrosion that takes place there. That's where it comes from, but it doesn't come out of the treatment plant. But we send the water out to be non-corrosive that's very important to us, how we send the water out to avoid that corrosion.
And a homeowner could get their water tested as well if they thought they had they know the lead pipe's John, they could have it tested at the pipe test area if they wanted, because their lead pipe is from the curb to the house, so we could easily test that. But our water doesn't leach the lead like the ones in Flint that cause all the water to have too much lead.
Yeah, we watch that super close every day. So, so does that help you out for the moment here? And I'd be glad to talk to you more about it too, just so you know. So, with that, I think there's like one more picture, but there's a list of projects, but the biggest one out there right now is the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. And I'm going to just turn it over for just a little bit to Mayor Mahoney. He's the chair of the Lake Agassiz Water Authority, which is the board for the users across the state.
So just to update the commission is what's happened in the Red River Valley Water Supply is we've been working on it for many, many years. And initially it was going to walk from the Missouri intake all the way over to Cooperstown to the Cheyenne and go down and then fill Lake Ashtabula. We found an alternative, come off the McCluskey Canal. We save about $200 million worth of cost to pump it up to McCluskey and then across. Our present plan is to go from McCluskey across, so that's saving it. The project itself, $1.1 billion, may go a little higher to 2 or 3, 1.3, whatever. But it is a 72-inch pipe that you got to bury in the ground and you're running water across. You're literally basically treating it very little, minimally, and dumping it back in the Cheyenne, and then it comes down to Ashtabula. if Troy asks for water, it roughly will take 2 weeks before it gets to Fargo, so there's going to be a convoluted way of doing that. But the city of Fargo owns a certain part. The city of West Fargo, we own a certain part of that, Lake Ashtabula, basically. What people don't understand in the city of Fargo, we've been paying on this since it started. So the inception was a 90-10 split initially. We're now to a 75-25% split. We have 4 loans out, A, B, C, and D right now, which we're servicing, and you've seen no impact basically on your monthly bill because we had that built into our debt service. The issue going forward is that we're going to eventually have to put some of the cost to the homeowner. So that's what we're trying to figure. The initial cost to the homeowner looked like $9 a month, and we just felt that that was too high. So we've got with the Bank of North Dakota, we have a loan that's 2%, so that decreases the cost. And we've done some things to try to mitigate the cost of what it might cost the homeowner. And we do what's called structured loan that eventually our water bill might increase over time. But for the commissioners to know, it will increase over a 10 to 15-year time. So the homeowners, we will tell when we're going to be paying more of the loan. And we're working on part of the federal part of this. If I can get the feds to pay part of this, it will cut our cost in half. So that's what we'd really like to try to do. So the things you all have to pay attention to, if we get federal money, it's $454 million. That's what we're trying to go after. And just like the diversion, we got $750 for federal money that's into the project. This had been theoretically a state program. Now we're trying to get a little federal money back into it. Don't have the same litigation issues, John, that we had with the diversion, in which people want water, so we don't seem to have as much opposition. And now the interesting switch in Canada is they also are concerned about drought protection. So initially we thought they were going to buck the project, but it doesn't look like it. But I'll just give you that briefly.
Can I just add a couple points there? The importance of North Dakota keeping the water, this is loud. The importance of North Dakota keeping its water in North Dakota and how important it is getting it from Garrison. and it's a commodity that many other parts of the country really need and want right now, and how close Troy and maybe the mayor, we came just a couple years ago to dealing with a drought, a serious drought in Fargo. I don't think a lot of residents know how very close we came.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, in 2021, yeah, we were within days or a week or so of calling for some of that drought supply water. Because like what the mayor mentioned, the Red River Valley water supply, it's intended or designed to get us through a 1930s style drought for about 10 years. We do have about a year's water supply in Lake Ashtabula that we own by Valley City, but it's not enough to get us through the 1930s style. So, but we were very close to calling for water a couple of years ago. So.
A word I would include is this is climate action. And Fargo's been on this path for a long time, and frankly, my whole life, we've been expecting water from the Garrison to be delivered over to the eastern side of the state, but it never happened. But with drought protection and for dry spells and flood protection and wet spells, this is climate resiliency. This is climate action. This is climate mitigation. Mm-hmm. And people don't like to use those words, but we know we have to be prepared for these extreme events. So good work, everybody. And what good foresight.
Yeah. And, the thing about the great thing, it's under construction now. We're going now on it. So
we're up to $260 million we're spending this 2 years. So it's a fourth done. So it's a huge deal. And just bear in mind, the diversion is 46% done. So we're trying to catch them. But
yep. No, so, well, that's Red River. So that, again, that's our biggest project we got going on right now. But so getting to my last slide here, I went a little bit over on my time, but hopefully that's okay. But looking at our proposed increase for 2025 and 2026, it would be $3.50 a month on an average residential bill, and then we'll put this all together at the end and see how it kind of stacks up. But so, with the data we have, the lower bar, the yellow bar, that's where we are today, $37.15 a month. If we go up by that $3.50, it'd be just over $40. But what we have here is we have, we're comparing 26 Fargo rate data against 24 data. That's what we had. So we don't know what other systems are necessarily going to do, so there could be a few different landing spots of where we land in as far as regional compared to regionally. We could move up, one spot or two or three. We don't know that yet, but that's kind of what would impact with this increase. And then I do want to just talk about the reasons for it, the reasons for the increase. So we just talked about Red River Valley Water Supply is under construction, and then like Mayor, we're responsible for 25% of that. It's under construction. We have the capital outlay all the way through 2075 for that project, but it does ramp up over the next decade or so. So that's part of the coverage we need to support that project. Another thing that we're seeing is on the water treatment side, we're seeing about 7% inflation over the past few years. One of the big things on the water treatment end is our chemical budget is about a third of our budget, or just under a third. But we saw in 2022, 23 consecutive years, we bid chemicals every year, so it's competitive. But we saw 25% increases in 2022 and 2023. So that really impacted our budget. Another thing, in addition to the treatment costs, we do work with engineering to support the engineering CIP, and they're seeing about a 7% increase on their projects too. So we see that, and that's, I've been here about 12 years. In that time, we've had 2 rate increases in 2018 and 23. And really at this point, I talked about sales tax, where we've kind of tapped out the sales tax as far as keeping the rates flat. And then another thing we did see is our membrane water treatment plant. There were some cost efficiencies in operating that, but that's really tapped out too. So one place to go is with a little increase. So we're proposing the $3.50 a month. If to put it out into perspective, it's about $12 or 12 cents a day per customer per meter, but that keeps our Red River Valley going. It keeps us going operationally in the treatment plant, and it would keep us going with our infrastructure in town. So with that, that's kind of what I have. Before I turn it over to Jim, do we have any other questions? Any more questions?
So I just want to make sure, this slide you'll see on our water rec and our stormwater. And so I just want to make sure I clarify, these are actual 2024 rates that we're comparing against, and we don't know what they are going to propose for 2025. It would have been a guess. So we just use their actual 2024 rates is what we are comparing ourselves against.
Yeah, with other systems. So it could be it's 26 rates against 24 rates. So because we just don't know. Okay.
Good afternoon again. For the next part of this, I'd like to just give you a little background on the water reclamation facility. I'd like to explain to you how we truly do reclaim water and wastewater for reuse purposes and that type of deal. And I want to provide some rationale as to why we need a rate increase at this time. So this is a slide that shows a little bit of a history of the Fargo wastewater plant at that time, water reclamation now. But essentially you can see in 1934 was the first year that we probably had a mechanical plant for the city of Fargo. And there's a little trend here. You can see that every 30 years or so, we've had a plant expansion, and each time we've had a plant expansion, we're able to double our treatment capacity. So in 2020 was the most recent bid that we had to expand the plant, and at that time, we again doubled our plant capacity to 29 million gallons per day and a peak of 50 million gallons per day. So when you talk about an expansion, generally you ask why. Well, first of all, increased capacity for Fargo and our regional partners, improve treatment for the environment and our regulators to accommodate Fargo's growth. And then, of course, you may or may not know, but obviously we have sewer agreements with West Fargo and Horace, but we also have sewer agreements with 13 other outside jurisdictions as well, too. So they depend upon the city of Fargo for good wastewater treatment. And then the how, we have what we call hybrid integrated fixed film activated sludge type of treatment. It's essentially a high performance, reduced footprint treatment technology. And with that technology, we're able to reduce phosphorus, ammonia, and nitrogen greatly, sometimes up to 80 to 90%. So as we look at our expansion, again, it doubles our capacity to 29 MGD average daily flow, 50 peak flow. But the construction cost will be around $150 million. It's going to be funded with a 2% 30-year clean water SRF loan, and the debt service is to be paid with user rates and infrastructure sales tax. But we'll have the ability to serve a regional population of 271,000 people. We do have a lagoon system. We generally utilize that in emergency wet weather flows or mechanical failures. We have the capability to store 1.6 billion gallons in that lagoon, and that was built in the 70s before we actually had better mechanical treatment. So we still utilize that on an emergency basis. We currently operate and maintain 70 sanitary lift stations for Fargo and our regional partners. We do take care of some of the lift stations for our regional partners. And a little point of reference, the city of Boulder, Colorado, very similar population to the city of Fargo, they have one sanitary lift station just because they are able to use elevation to their benefit. And then we have 3 large interceptor sewer systems that we operate and maintain. The Broadway Interceptor, which was installed in the 30s, the West Side Interceptor, which was installed in the 70s, and then 45th Street, which was commissioned in 2009. The Broadway Interceptor, obviously being the oldest, we do have a wet weather dedicated force main for that. So in the event of heavy rain events, we're able to move rainwater and like sump pump, roof drain water and that type of thing to keep it out of the sanitary and move it to the wastewater plant. So that's a little bit of an emergency type situation there. So we like to talk a little bit about our effluent reuse facilities. Essentially what we do is we take treated wastewater and we treat it to reverse osmosis quality water for use in industry. And the 2 industries we have an agreement with now are Tharaldson Ethanol and North Dakota Soybean Processors. Since 2007, we've sold 6 billion gallons of water to Tharaldson Ethanol, and it's essentially just reused wastewater. And then the North Dakota Soybean Processors, they'll be online in the fall of this year. We've had 3-way agreements with them. It's the city of Fargo, Casserole Water, and then the industry itself. We have a separate rate structure for them. Essentially, they help pay for our operation and maintenance, and we sell the water to them at a value of that water. So that's where we generate our revenue from that. So the benefits, obviously, it saves on water resources. It's great for the environment. We can reclaim that water. It saves ground and surface water. But it's also, we call revenue diversification. Instead of having treated wastewater going directly into the river, we're finding a use for it and generating revenue for it for the city of Fargo. So when you talk a little bit more about regionalization, we have our volumetric users. We have West Fargo and Horace. Essentially, we charge them a price per 1,000 gallons that they send to us for treatment. Then the 13 additional users, which I talked about earlier, we charge them Fargo's rate plus a surcharge. The reason for the surcharge is we do the operation and maintenance of their sanitary lift stations. So some of those would be like Riley's Acres, Harwood, Oxbow, Frontier, and there's many others. So we do have planned future connections for Horace and West Fargo moving forward. But again, we want to reiterate the fact that regionalization does benefit Fargo residents. It spreads out the fixed costs amongst users. The environmental benefits are important too, because we're getting rid of lagoon systems that some of these smaller towns would have, and they're pumping their wastewater to us for better treatment. This rate containment strategy, very similar to what Troy was telling you. The one thing I want to point out here is you look at the actual customer bill on the bottom of $21.50. That's very, very low when it comes to a sewer bill across the upper Midwest. And we have the same type of benefit from infrastructure sales tax. You can see that we're saving our residents $11 on their bill just because of infrastructure sales tax. And like Troy said, when we have visitors that come to Fargo, when they use our water streets and our sewer, it's good that they help support that. And then, of course, the regional service, $4 per household that we're saving. Again, the 19% is similar to what Troy was saying as well, too. So you look at, without those containment strategies, our estimated customer monthly bill would be $38.07. So when you look at this graph, and this is the market, it essentially shows our regional peers when it comes to what their rates are, we would be about middle of the pack. But with our rates the way we are today at $21.50, we're essentially the lowest. And the one thing I want to point out with having the lowest sewer rates is, in 2008, you can see off to the right there, our rate for our sewer use was $18.65. So our rate has only increased $2.85 over 16 years. So we've tried really hard to keep our rates low for many years. So why a rate increase in 2005? Well, first and foremost, the treatment facility expansion, we're going to have new debt that we have to take care of, obviously. But with that new plant, we're going to be able to meet future regulatory requirements, which is important. We're going to have improved treatment, which is good for the environment and our regulators, increased capacity for Fargo and our regional partners. But when it comes with this new plant, we're going to have increased costs, obviously, operating costs. Chemicals are higher, maintenance is higher, and then staffing. To try to find licensed operators gets to be difficult for us and to keep them. The one thing that's going to change with our new plant is the fact that our electrical consumption will increase about 3 times because we utilize a lot of blowers and a lot of aeration, so our energy consumption will be quite high moving forward with our new plant. Our collection system capital cost. You can see that not only when we are rehabbing and installing new pipe and new lift stations, construction costs are higher, so that obviously impacts us. We have 483 miles of collection system sewer, gravity sewer. That doesn't include the force mains, but it's obviously a lot of pipe that we're doing operation and maintenance on. And then as far as Fargo growth goes, the water rec funds, utility funds, actually helps fund the upsizing in like greenfields and new developments and that type of deal. So again, that is helping to support the engineering CIP as well. So again, here's our regional peers that we want to compare ourselves to, but we're requesting consideration for a $3.50 rate increase for the water rec utility, and that would get us from $21.50 to $25. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. If not, I'll pass it on to Tom.
We'll finally talk about storm sewer utility today. A little outline of what we look to discuss. Everyone knows this Fargo is flat. What you maybe don't know is how much that increased our costs associated with storm sewer because of that unique flatness. Sorry. Also talk about our system size, look at our residential rate history, our recent model updates, and the proposed fee increase. So as I mentioned, our flat terrain creates a lot of issues and increases. One example is how it increases the number of storm lift stations we have here in town. You know, Jim mentioned some of our other peer cities and how they have few sanitary sewer lift stations. You know, City of Sioux Falls has 1 storm sewer lift station. They're about 1.5 times the size of us. St. Cloud has 1, Bismarck has 5, Grand Forks has 27, City of Fargo has 82. Likewise with storm lift stations, our flat terrain creates issues when it comes to the cost of our pipe as well. You know, a peer city like City of Sioux Falls where they have terrain to work with, you know, might size a pipe for capacity and find they need a 24-inch pipe. Because they're grade, they can put it a little steeper than we can. But unfortunately, we are typically installing our pipes at minimum slope. And so unfortunately, we have to upsize a 24-inch at 1% would be equivalent to a 42-inch at minimum grade. And of course, with larger pipe comes larger cost. So our average annual bid price, 24-inch pipe is $103 a foot. If we have to upsize to 42-inch, it more than doubles the cost to $210 per foot. Similar to the other utilities, we have a lot of pipes in the ground. We have over 521 miles of pipe ranging from 4-inch to 132-inch, which is 11 feet in diameter. As I mentioned, we have 82 storm lift stations, over 10,000 manhole structures, and nearly 14,000 storm inlets. Also have a number of ponds and water quality devices. Some of these publicly owned ponds, coincidentally, half are owned by the city and half are owned and maintained by the Park District, but there are a number of private ponds as well. And the city is responsible for the inspection of those on a 5-year basis. Similar with water quality devices, the city owns some. We have 5, but there are also 103 privately owned and maintained water quality devices, which we are required to inspect on a 2-year basis. The storm sewer utility was first implemented in 1998. In 2001, there was an increase from $1 to $2, and the following year, another increase from $2 to $3. And you can see it remained flat for about 16 years after that. In 2017, 2018, went through a pretty considerable effort to update our financial model. And there were a number of things that we considered when doing so. Looked at our pipe network, both the age and the size of that. Likewise with the storm sewer lift stations. Looked at future capital improvement needs, staffing cost, looking at future inflation costs, and then also operational and maintenance expenses that are performed by Public Works. So ultimately, what came out of that model update is the methodology for commercial rates was changed. It used to be a flat rate, but we went to consideration of the parcel size and the amount of impervious area. What came out of that model is we did propose a rate increase from $3 to $6, and that was determined to be too large for a one-time increase. And so in order to not fully implement that increase, operational and maintenance costs remained in the general fund. And then storm sewer utility costs for rehab and recon projects were continued to be paid by street sales tax rather than the utility. Ultimately, what was approved was a $1 increase from $3 to $4 in 2019. Again, in 2021, did another update. We had proposed an increase from $4 to $6 for 2022. Again, that was determined to be too large of a one-time increase. And so the way we implemented that lesser increase is that operational and maintenance costs remained in the general fund. And again, costs related to the storm sewer utility for rehab and recon projects continue to be paid for by street sales tax. Ultimately, City Commission approved a rate increase for residential users from $4 to $5 in 2022. Here you can just see that more full history. And so here again in 2025, went through a model update and have two scenarios we're proposing for consideration in 2025. Scenario A, the utility would continue to be subsidized by the general fund. We would propose an increase from $5 to $6. But as I mentioned, being subsidized through the general fund by those operational and maintenance costs would be remaining in the general fund. We would, however, be able to transition, and the storm sewer utility costs for rehab and recon projects would no longer be funded by sales tax. They'd be funded by the utility. And then commercial, industrial, multifamily would all increase proportionally as well. Scenario B is really making the utility whole and stand on its own. But what it would require is a residential rate increase from $5 to $8. It transitions about $1.5 million annually in operational and maintenance costs to the utility from the general fund. And likewise in this scenario, no longer subsidized by street sales tax. And again, commercial, industrial, and multifamily would increase proportionally. Just to speak to a little bit of the operational and maintenance costs that we'd be considering or asking you to consider transitioning from the general fund. Public Works would continue to perform the work. It would just be funded by the utility rather than the general fund. And these costs are related to the operational and maintenance of the storm sewer system and are required by the state of North Dakota through our MS4 permit. So some of the costs that are included in that are street sweeping, maintenance repair of lift stations, which Public Works has 2 existing employees that work on those. And then there's 2 additional existing Public Works employees that work on the cleaning and cammering of our storm sewer pipes. And then it would also include maintenance equipment like a Vector truck. So again, we talked about it at the start that we are unique, and there are things that do unfortunately contribute to our rate being higher than some of our peers. Currently, where we are is $5, which kind of shows us kind of in that middle of the pack. With making the utility whole, would propose a $3 increase to residential users, putting us at $8 a month. I do also just real briefly want to talk about how this would impact commercial industrial rates. The first example, again, talked about how the rate is set up to look at the size of parcel and the amount of impervious area. This example, I think of a typical fast food restaurant as kind of the scenario that this one fits into. So 1 acre site at 80% impervious, current rate is just over $31. Scenario A would bring it to $37.58. Scenario B to $50.11 monthly. Another example, 3-acre site at 60% impervious. Again, think of an average size hotel site. They're just under $70 a month today. Scenario A would bring it to $83.58, and scenario B to $111.44. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Brenda.
Okay, so what we are recommending is a $10 increase on the residents' utility bill. This would include water, water reclamation, and storm sewer. This would be an equivalent to about 33 cents a day and the similar percentage increase to commercial and wholesale rates. So what we did is we combined that rate comparison. So we added the water rec, along with stormwater, and did the regional comparison. And you can see that we're on the lowest part of the range. In fact, we're third lowest. So we're towards the bottom, third lowest on the range. And so with that, that concludes our presentation, and we look forward to any conversation along with addressing any questions you have.
And so just to clarify, the reason that the former rate total isn't on the chart as a comparison is because we were at the very bottom.
That is correct.
Yeah. So we didn't register before. We were first. That was my only point, sorry.
Questions? I'm the king of dumb questions. I heard recently where a city, I believe in Minnesota, contracted to sell water to a firm out of California bottling their terrifically good water. And I don't know how much water we have, and I don't know how much room we sell. We sell wastewater, we make money. We sell to our neighbors to make money. We sell methane to make money. And I don't know if we have the room in our capacities, and we have the best water in the country. Has anybody ever talked about having a private vendor or us having a bottling company to adjunct our revenues and market our money? And I don't even know if there's capacity to market any extra water, but it's happening in the state next door. I'm just curious about it. That's all.
No, thank you. Thanks for the question. I haven't really thought a lot about that from a capacity. I mean, that's with water usage from just what's drinking water, that's a really small percentage of how the water gets used in our system. So as far as production capacity, we would have no issues, I don't think, doing something like that. But as far as how we go about that, as far as, any kind of how we functionally do that and staffing, that's a great question. I've never really thought about that before, but.
Could we have a guy like in a Hawaiian shirt model it, and guys with jeans be in the engineering picture or whatever? Yeah. Mike, that's going to be to-do list maybe in 2026, but we'll see. Michelle, you have any questions?
Yeah, historically, have we had rate increases for each utility at the same time before, or have they happened at separate times?
I can.
Go
I
ahead.
think as long as I can remember, or since I've been here, we try to do water and water rec at the same time, but we try to stagger years. It wouldn't be like in successive years. We try to forecast out and see what that would look like.
So I think if you look back in time, water and water rec have been teamed together. So that's been about every other year, or it might have a few more gap years in there. And then we've added the stormwater in. And so I think where we're struggling right now is that question is great, because can we forecast it out differently that maybe staggers it a little bit more? Unfortunately, like with stormwater, we haven't had a rate increase for a while. Last year we did streetlights and forestry, and those will be looking out. Those are not as often as what you see. Water and water rec are a little more more frequently, and then you kind of sprinkle a stormwater in periodically, a street lighting, and a forestry. I think where we're struggling this year, where we're getting all three of them, is it's been a while and we've been doing such low increases. We're just not managing the need.
And when was the last rate increase prior to this?
What was the question? When was the last?
When was the last time we increased rates?
Yeah, so just on the water side, I can't speak to others, but on the water side, since I've been here, since 2012, we've had 2 rate increases. One was 2018, I believe, and one 2023. So it's only been 2 in 12 years.
And on the water rec side, it was 2023, we had our last increase. Sometimes it varies from a buck or so, or 50 cents, just depending upon need. One thing that's important to remember moving forward is that infrastructure sales tax. You know, even if we have slight increases without the infrastructure sales tax, they would be much greater, of course, to compensate for that.
Without that sales tax, it really would be, we'd be bouncing much higher. Second issue is on stormwater. Basically, one year we had a 7-inch rain, and we realized how vulnerable we are. We're so flat in what we do. We kind of had given stormwater a free pass on wastewater and water. Basically, in a sense, we were carrying it with that. The study was done 2018, 16, I don't remember when, but we finally looked at stormwater as a separate utility because we realized how much we were spending on it. And I think, Tom, isn't that kind of something that happened all over the country as people began to say, hey, stormwater is really maybe a separate animal from sewer and water, so we should look at it as a separate utility rate.
Yeah, say a couple things kind of related to this. So, you know, you can see that the rate was essentially unchanged for nearly 20 years. And I think we were really focused on a lot of other things, right? Flood protection and all that. Like the mayor said, there was a big push in 2017, 2018 to really look at the storm utility. It was still is being subsidized by the general fund and street sales tax. And so really the goal would be to have the utility stand on its own. Right, the expenses related to the utility paid through the utility. And so, again, what was proposed in 2018 would be to move the residential rate for 2019 up to $6. Sorry, I accidentally went back, and now I'm not going to be able to. So it was proposed to go from 3 to 6. What was implemented was a $1 increase to $4. So again, we came back 3 years later looking to kind of catch up some of that, proposed 4 to 6. We increased to $5. That's part of the reason why we're back here again with a fairly sizable increase, because we haven't really met where we tried to get to through that financial model. I think all 3 utilities, and it can be modified, but currently what's shown in each one of the models is an every other year increase is what's been modeled.
So the commission has asked for 2 things. There's not huge rate increases has been one of the requests, because to the consumer, right, that's a bad deal. And so we've also asked for kind of give us an idea. I think it'd be valuable for you sometime to go to both utilities, and they do have some graduated step increases over the next 20 years that they're in there. But we are buffered very much by that sales tax. You can see it's $10 basically on both utilities that it hits. The other thing we got to remember on when we get into this is commercial. So in the city of Fargo, we have residential, about 50% of our tax base in commercial. So a lot of our stuff is structured actually that commercial takes a bigger burden. So commercial pays more. It used to be kind of funny, right? You used to go to commercial and say, we want you to use water. We want you to use water. We'll give you a lower rate than the residents. Now that's flipped a bit. It's saying, nope, you need to pay more than the residents to do that. Even volumetric, Troy, we do get some discounts, but we're a little bit careful about that, because it used to be, boy, more water you use, we're going to really give you a discount. And John, I think on your sustainability, we talked about that as, you gotta kind of pay for your freight. So one of the benefits, West Fargo has commercial about 20%. We have commercial 50%. So our residents benefit by that fact that commercial picks up. Whenever the department heads look at that, they always look at commercial, residential, and do we tax commercial a little bit more than we tax our residents? And our primary, I think your primary focus has always been the residents, taxpayers, keep the rates as low as possible. So,
Mr. Chair. So I think it's important, obviously, to talk about the fact that any increase is difficult for our residents, especially right now. And I think what we're seeing is, historically decisions that didn't look out kind of strategically, holistically at longer term impacts of some of the decisions that were made, frankly, some years ago. And now we've been asked to think more strategically, longer term, about what some of these expense decisions are. For instance, technology decisions that were made 4 years ago, and now what we're paying for those. When you look at the general operating fund, you know, some of the staffing issues that were decided, some of the services, all of that. But there needs to be an ongoing consideration here of a longer look of impacts of decisions. And how do we pay for, you know, the services that we provide in a way that's, number one, equitable, but also acknowledges the expense, while at the same time we're always looking at the expenses. And what also has happened simultaneously is that we've really maximized the efficiencies of the sales tax, of operational efficiencies. By the way, I sit in on every monthly utility committee meeting, and we're constantly looking, especially the utilities, but I know every division is, at how can we continue to have efficiency in our operations. And then you have the reality of the inflation and prior decisions, I will add, where, you know, a recommendation was made to cover the costs. And, you know, for reasons then, that recommendation was reduced from $3 to $1, and over time, now we're seeing the impact of that. And so, again, this is a difficult conversation to have, increasing any bill for our residents and our commercial users. But we also have a responsibility, just from a budget perspective, to figure out strategically how we're going to continue to pay for the services. And you know, it's a conversation we need to have.
And I just think for our new commissioner, one thing you have to understand is utilities pays personnel costs. So a lot of times our general fund would even be bigger if utility wasn't paying for the people that work for us. So that's part of what we're trying to do. And Tom made a good point, is we want each division to stand on its own. And oftentimes what we did is we took money out of the general fund to make up any deficit. And so all the departments are supposed to, quote, stand on their own on the fees that they collect. So that's something, this is right sizing all of that in all our departments, because if we have to, we pull money from the general fund to make up a deficit. Just make sure we have no deficits in all three departments, basically, as I understand it, right? Yeah, and that's what we've always tried to keep a little bit for the public to understand. But the grief I get when I get in front of a committee in Bismarck is our rates are lower than many places across the state. And they'll say to me, Tim, you don't know how much water costs in a small town, but it costs a lot of money because they're treating it for so few amount of people. And that's that one big slide there. But that's what I get grief about when John and I, we're talking about the diversion, and then we go into Red River. It's, well, you guys got great utility rates. So, but they've been giving us loans, like Troy says, that because we regionalized. They've given us loans because we're forward thinking. And that has been great, because what it did for us as far as utilities, our interest rates are very low on many of our loans because we've been able to work with the state. But it's always hard to be a commissioner when you do a rate increase in utilities, because you always feel like I came here to save money and not cause issues. The other hard reality is that's the cost we see. And I hate it when Troy tells me how much chemicals have gone up, but that's the reality we live in. So.
And I think.
Any other?
Okay. Commissioner Turnberg, to your point too, I think that's a question we ask ourselves too. Is it better to do it this year and then not have one and then have one? Or is it better to have one every year and there's always an increase? And so that's right. So, I mean, if we would do something every year, because that's one thing we've talked about, strategically planning for when those rates would come forward. So it is a very much more planned increase. And so we kind of wrestle in our discussions of what would be a better path forward to.
And I think the policy issue for the commissioners is to figure out policy. What do we want to do and what do we want our staff to do? And I think we continue in our governance discussions talking about that. And that's what the staff likes to know, is what's our philosophy, what do we want to do? Because the request was $6. And the team at the time said, nope, we'll only do a lot less. Well, we got to make it up now, and maybe we should have jumped. But it's always the gulp factor. How much gulp am I going to give a taxpayer? Anything else for the good of the order? We're done almost by one, but good job. Did they give you enough data, John?
They did.
You love data, don't you?
Thanks, everybody, very much.
Thank you.